Hi, my name is James, and today we're going to be talking about the difference between Ford V8 engines and Chevy V8 engines and how to differentiate the two. Now, before the famous pushrod engines of the 1950s, Ford and Chevy were doing two completely different things. Ford had the famous flathead engine for about 21 years, and Chevy had the Stovebolt 6. So they're doing two completely different things. Then Ford switches to the Y block because General Motors had all these great V8 engines, pushrod engines that were more modern. So they quickly came out with the Y block. Now, how to identify the two is totally different. Ford started coming out with more engine families because Chevy had 5 different brands all developing their own engines in-house. So they each had their own V8 engine department. So Ford, after the Ford Edsel did not succeed, they decided to put their focus into engine families. So they went from, for example, the Y block to the Ford Edsel engines, to the Windsor engines, to the Cleveland engines. They had the 385 big block. They eventually went to the modular engines, where Chevy sort of consolidated all their engines. They eventually went to the corporate engines, and Chevy engines are typically referred to just as small blocks and the number of the cubic inch displacement. So, for example, Ford, you would say this vehicle has an FE engine or a Cleveland engine or a small block Windsor engine, where Chevy, you just might say 350 small block or 427 big block. They don't really use engine families and talk about the factories as much, where Ford references the Ford factory. So I was just answering a couple of classic car questions that people had for me. Number one, they wanted to know which Ford Thunderbird was the best selling of all time. It's actually the seventh generation from 1977 to 1979. It was actually not as popular as the Ford Mustang, but it's probably as iconic, if not more iconic, considering it was out 9 years before the Mustang was ever released. A lot of people don't know that the Ford Thunderbird came out only 2 years after the Chevy Corvette. And then the Mercury Cougar was its stablemate as well. And then it competed against cars like the Monte Carlo. Now, the Monte Carlo, similar to the Pontiac Chieftain, had certain years that were more popular than others. So 1973 was the most popular year for the Monte Carlo, and the Pontiac Chieftain 1955 was one of the last years it came out with. Now, the seventh generation Ford Thunderbird really made Ford reconsider how long they were going to keep the car, because the Mustang was having a couple down years with the Mustang too. So it actually outsold that. And then the Ford F-150, a lot of people don't realize that the engine family they use right now, which is called the Coyote, actually evolved from the single overhead cam modular engines. And before that had the pushrod Windsor V8. And then there you see some Corvette